What is going on, my fellow nerds? OperatorOtter here, and today we are going to discuss this equation. Yep, this is the entire equation that is the reason for resource cost reduction doing what it is doing with Rod of Kepeleke. And for you math-savvy folks out there, you'll notice something funky about this equation because it technically means your damage gain is infinite. Theoretically, yes it is, but practically it's not possible, and we will discuss why that is. The reason we are discussing this is because Ring of Starless Skies has become all the rage for the Quill Volley Overpower build, as it's increasing the damage of the build by a 200% multiplicative damage modifier. But the majority of people don't understand how or why this is happening with resource cost reduction, so let's talk about it. Before we get deep into the math, let's first discuss the concept of what resource cost reduction is doing with Rod of Kepeleke. So what I want you to do is imagine that you have 100 Vigor and a skill that costs 100 Vigor to cast, and it deals 10 damage. So if you cast this skill until you had 0 Vigor, how many times could you cast it? Well, once. So that means your total damage output would be 10. Okay, now imagine you have 50% resource cost reduction. How much does this skill that costs 100 Vigor now cost? Well, now it costs 50 Vigor. So how many times could you cast it? Well, you could cast it twice, meaning your total damage output is now 20. So how many times more damage is 20 compared to 10? It's 2 times more damage, or 100% multiplicative damage gain. So by gaining 50% resource cost reduction, we have increased our damage output by 100%. Okay, let's go further with this. Let's imagine you have 75% resource cost reduction. How much does this skill that cost 100 Vigor now cost? Well, now it costs 25 Vigor. So how many times could you cast it? Well, you cast it 4 times, meaning your total damage output is now 40. So how many times more damage is 40 damage compared to 10 damage? It's 4 times more damage, or a 300% multiplicative damage gain. So with Rod of Kepeleke, this is what's happening. If you have 300 maximum Vigor with 50% resource cost reduction, the game says, hey, we're about to consume all our resource for big damage. And then the second flag goes, hold on, bucko, we got 50% resource cost reduction. To which Rod of Kepeleke says, yeah, but I'm consuming everything, so what do? Well, how much would we need to consume with 50% resource cost reduction to equal our 300 maximum Vigor? Well, we need to consume 600 Vigor because at 50% resource cost reduction, the amount would now be 300. Okay, cool. Let's consume 600 Vigor instead of 300. That way, with 50% resource cost reduction, we are still going to consume your maximum of 300 Vigor. Sounds good. And that's what's happening. Another way we could look at this equation is needed Vigor amount times, in parentheses, 1 minus your resource cost reduction equals your maximum Vigor. So let's say we had 50% resource cost reduction and 300 Vigor as said before. 50% is the same as 0.5. Let's plug that into the equation to look like this. Needed Vigor amount times 1 minus 0.5 equals your 300 maximum Vigor. Alrighty, the next step would be needed Vigor amount times 0.5 equals 300. Now we divide both sides by 0.5 and we get needed Vigor amount equals 600. Alrighty, so what this means is that at 300 Vigor with 50% resource cost reduction, the game is going to set our maximum Vigor to 600 to satisfy the condition of having 50% resource cost reduction. And now my question is, how much bigger is 600 compared to 300? It's twice as big. Well, that means you are dealing twice as much damage. Therefore, 50% resource cost reduction is giving you 100% more multiplicative damage. Okay, I get it. I just explained the exact same concept 3 times. And if you got it on the first round, awesome. But different people learn information in different ways, so I'm just trying to cover all my bases here so that everyone has the opportunity to understand what is going on. Now that we have that concept understood, let's get to the math. So here is a raw overview of the damage gain we can achieve as we keep gaining 5% resource cost reduction. And as you can see, it starts to exponentiate out of control. The thing is, the devs have put a cap to resource cost reduction at 75%. So this section of insane amounts of damage gain is out of our reach. So let's look at the other chart below, as this one illustrates the obtainable amount of damage gain with resource cost reduction. And as we can see, it is an exponential damage gain for every 5% we gain. Pretty awesome, right? Well, the problem is resource cost reduction actually works off of a reverse multiplier function that prevents the player from being able to achieve 100% resource cost reduction. The function looks like this. 1 minus, in giant parentheses, 1 minus source 1 times 1 minus source 2 times 1 minus source 3, and so on. Because of this, we are getting a value less than the total amount of resource cost reduction we could have if we were able to just add the values together. So then what happens when we take a stat that has exponentiated damage and multiply it by a rule that states our actual amount will be less than the total additive amounts of that stat we have in our gear? Well, we get something that looks like this, where if we added a source that was 10% resource cost reduction, we will still obtain an exponentiated form of damage, but is much less than what we originally saw. This is because for every 10% of resource cost reduction we add to our build, we are multiplying our damage by 11.1% compared to the previous total amount of resource cost reduction we had. For the mathy boys out there, this is why resource cost reduction does not have diminishing returns. If it did, it would look something like this, which is what something like adding the crit hit damage stat functions off of. So now my hope is that you understand what's going on with resource cost reduction and why it's a very powerful stat with Rod of Kepeleke based builds and why putting it anywhere we can in our gear is a powerful option. This also explains why Ring of Starless Skies is all the rage, because it gives 50% resource cost reduction, which equates to 100% multiplicative damage gain, on top of its 50% intrinsic multiplier to give you a total 200% multiplicative damage modifier. Now, though this seems like an incredibly powerful option, it is in fact not the best in slot option. There is in fact another option we can run that gives us 6 times more damage than what Ring of Starless Skies gives us. And in the next video, we will cover what that option is and how it functions. That's all I have for you. As always, if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comments or ask me in my Discord or Twitch when I go live. Links are in the description below. Have a wonderful day, ladies and gents. I'll see you in the next one.